As a community, we build empathy, curiosity, joy, and connection when we share stories with you. Welcome to Storytellers Project, part of the USA Today network.
Hi, I'm Lee Guidry, Children's Issues Reporter for the Daily Advertiser in Lafayette. I've covered Louisiana schools for the last 9 years, which has afforded me the privilege of telling the stories of the students, teachers, and families in our communities. The Lafayette Storytellers Project has been a tradition in the Daily Advertiser's newsroom for several years, and my role tonight is to be your MC. So we appreciate you taking a chance on live storytelling and sharing your evening with us. Tonight, we're joining Humana and 6 Americans from across the nation to create community. Since 2016, the Storytellers Project has brought more than 100 shows each year to communities across the country. But we've canceled our in-person season as part of the USA Today Network's response to the novel coronavirus. While it feels unsafe to be together in theaters, it feels necessary to be together online. So we've handpicked some incredible storytellers and inspiring people to bring you tonight's show, My Family, My Culture. So let's say hi to our storytellers. We have Joyce Turner Keller, Wayne and Renee Evans, Ahmed Beckett, and Mary Beth Broussard. Welcome. Tonight isn't a TED Talk. It's not Toastmasters, not a how-to talk or an inspirational speech, an educational lecture, or a slideshow. We won't sell you anything, except maybe a subscription. This is storytelling, and storytelling is based on visiting. You open your heart and your mind, and you pay attention to a person you care about and someone you want to feel closer to. So we invite you to do that tonight. Some of these storytellers will be polished and professional. Some will be casual and conversational. We ask you to receive all of them because that's how community change happens. We believe creating empathy and understanding is vital at all times, but especially in times of uncertainty. And I am so excited to welcome up our first teller. Welcome, Joyce Turner Keller.
Hello. Oh, for me, home is a state of mind, and in my culture, it is that place that the heart houses. And oh, how well I know. Here I am an adult now, 21 years of age, with my own house, but it doesn't feel like home. I worked until midnight, stopped to pick up a shrimp dinner, thinking of sharing it with my grandmother, as I'd done so many times before. I get home, no one is there. Kick off my shoes, but the house is so quiet. Not a sound. This is one night I should welcome, but I don't. There's no joy. There's no happiness here. I try eating the meal that I picked up, and each bite makes me feel even lonelier. This is not my mother's kitchen, even though the table is beautifully set. I miss the chatter at each meal. I'm just not used to eating alone, and hoping fatigue will set in so I can sleep with no love. So I jump up, I put on my shoes and grab my purse and my keys. And oh, please don't let me forget that shrimp. Into my car I go, driving down a starlit highway to my grandmother's house in Florida, where there were no street lights. But I know when I get there, I'll find the love, the peace, and the feeling of being home. The night is dark, and the ride is 23 miles long, and all I can hear are the sound of the tires on the road. I find myself thinking of the many times I wanted to get away from what I am running back to. In my culture, the sound in my culture, the joy of the noise in a busy house filled with life, laughter, family, good and bad advice, and oh, the confusion. This is what home is. The feeling of security and belonging. Finally, I arrived at my grandmother's house, and before I can knock, she yells, "Is that you, Joyce?" She knows the sound of my high heels on the pavement. She opens the door, I walk in, and she said, "What did you bring me, girl?" I hand her that one last shrimp from the box. She takes it, hugs me lovingly, and invites me to sit on her bed, something she never does. And she eats the shrimp and she smiles at me lovingly. There I was. You see, in my culture, a Black woman was to stay with her husband no matter what he did. You mean you stuck it out and you went through the suffering and the trauma and you kept it to yourself. You see, a smile could hide lots of pain, but no, not from my grandmother. And there I was thinking nobody knew what I was going through but me. And little did I know. You see, my grandmother sensed I was being mistreated. And without saying a word, I knew from the way she held me. And she began to pray for God to change things. She cried out, "Lord, you made her. You know all about what she's going through. Please be with her in her dark hours. You see, I know you can deliver her because, Lord, I believe your word." Amen, amen, amen. But oh, how the lessons of my past would shape my future and who I would become. As I look back to yesteryears and recall my upbringing and my spiritual foundation of prayer, I know that it was because of my grandmother and my mother. My mother used to pray, asking God to take care of her children and never let them go astray. Many a night she would cry out to the Lord and she would give him praise even before she saw the answer to those prayers. In my culture, we are taught that if you can pray about it, you don't worry about it. You shout because you believe it and you wait to receive it. You see, after a very traumatic marital experience, I found out how powerful prayer could be. You see, after many years of tears and fear and sleepless nights, I found myself reaching way back to that night that my grandmother prayed for me for things to change. And I began to repeat those words with the same passion as if she was right there beside me. I cried out, "Lord, you made me. You know all about me. You know what I'm going through. I need you, Lord, like I've never needed you before. Come through for me." My grandmother prayed and she asked you to be with me in these dark hours. Now, Lord, deliver me, Lord, like you delivered my mother. I know you can do it. Something took a hold of me and it didn't let me go. I found myself having an out-of-body experience. I found myself praising God just like my mother had done so many times when she was on her knees. And then I realized this is what deliverance and breakthrough feels like. You know, faith without works is dead. So when the door to freedom opened, I took it. You see, I didn't wait for God to send me a taxi. I left running, hoping to catch a ride. You see, in my culture, a strong prayer life, it will sustain you when all else fails. After almost 60 years in the ministry now and going through the school of hard knocks and the valley of mercy and forgiveness, I am that vision that my grandmother and my mother saw. I am all that God created me to be. And today I am the elder, the counselor, the teacher, that safe place for family to call home. That place where I can lead others to freedom by sharing my life experiences, giving them the courage, the empowerment, and resources to overcome every challenge, climb each mountain with the vision of a brighter future, knowing they can become their best selves by loving themselves and believing in their dreams. No matter how dark the path, day will dawn again and they will smile. Watching my grandchildren and my children rise above adversity and become entrepreneurs, independent and self-assured, that is my greatest blessing. Having mentored each one separately, because each has a unique calling on their lives. When they are told that it is arrogance, they quickly respond. This is confidence. This is motivation. This is drive. They know this from having watched me in public and private settings. My youngest son, Lakem, he had challenges to overcome and was never mentally imprisoned because, you see, I taught him always to see himself free. And from college to incarceration, from prison to a penthouse in Omaha, Nebraska, I taught him to never have an I can't and I won't. He has an I can't and I won't fail attitude. So putting one foot before the other each morning as I rise, I rise with the mindset of victory. And I see each stumbling block as an opportunity to achieve what some deem it the impossible. This will be the legacy that I leave to the next generation of leaders. I will instill the need for strong family ties where the table is always set with loud conversation, where you can come back and you're spiritually fed, you're nurtured, and you're restored. And we break the cultural curses of bondage from the past, knowing that you can always come home again. Not to stay, but to feel and regain from the past a sense of self, and feel the love, and you bask in the serenity of our ancestors' answered prayers. And oh yes, yes, I know I am home again.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for sharing your heart and your grandmother with us. Humana is sponsoring Storytellers Project shows nationally and now virtually because they believe that sharing stories and connecting as humans online and in person makes for healthier people and healthier communities. We need these connections to each other, to health, now more than ever. As COVID-19 vaccinations become available in communities across the country, Humana strongly encourages you to consider getting the vaccine, to discuss with your doctor what is best for your health, and they would like to share this short video message.
It's actually not possible to get COVID-19 from any of these vaccines because they are not using live virus.
Short-term side effects that were observed in the leading COVID-19 vaccine trials included injection site pain and redness, fatigue, muscle aches and pains, joint pain, and headache.
When one develops these short-term symptoms after receiving the vaccine, that in fact is a sign that the vaccine is working and that your body is marshaling its defense network.
It's important to note that none of these vaccines can give you COVID-19 since they only express a protein from the virus that allows your body's immune system to generate antibodies.
And now our second story tonight is a twofer. We have Wayne and Renee Evans.
In 1984, my wife and I were living in Lafayette when she died of breast cancer. I was still a single dad. I had two sons, age 5, and the other 6-month-old infant. 2 years later, a year later, I decided I would start dating again. Well, I had all kinds of questions like, who would want to date a preacher, much less marry one? What woman in her right mind would want a ready-made family? And most of all, having found love in my first marriage, is it possible to find love again? Well, I thought, I've got to start dating. So I had a couple of blind dates. And then I decided I have to do it on my own. And so I knew a young woman who's a member of my congregation. She was attractive, single again. And so I thought, yeah, she's familiar with my congregation. She grew up here in this church. And so she knows our church culture. And so I called her up and asked her to go to a movie with me. And her response was, are you asking me for a date? I assured her I was. And so we went out. We saw a movie. The movie wasn't so hot, but the conversation afterwards was delightful. A couple of weeks later, I said, why don't you bring your two children, a boy and a girl, to my house for dinner, and the 6 of us will eat together. And so she walked in the door, and I think she was a bit surprised and impressed because I had fried chicken myself. And so we sat down to eat, said a prayer, and as soon as I said amen, a glass of milk got spilled. And then another, it was like cars rear-ending each other in a chain reaction collisions. 5 glasses of milk got spilled during the course of that meal. We spent more time mopping up milk than we did sitting down to actually eat. When that disastrous evening was over with, she walked out the door, and I figured, well, she'll never come back here again. She'd be crazy to. But a couple of weeks later, I kept thinking of all of the patience and good humor she showed while we were eating and cleaning up all that mess of milk. And so I got up my nerve and I said, hey, let's try another date, this time without children. And so we did. And during the course of the evening, we agreed that it might be best that we did not let anyone in the congregation know that we were having some dates together, because people might think, if it didn't work out, are they going to take sides or try to play matchmaker? And so that went well for several weeks. I remember now over the next several months, one date in particular, we went to see that biblical musical, Joseph and His Technicolor Dreamcoat. And the very thing I was afraid of happened. We ran into Steve, a member of the congregation. I figured our secret is out. Everyone in church is going to know that we're dating. But the strange thing is, Steve said nothing to anyone about seeing us. Months later, I asked him, I said, Steve, what did you think when you saw us at that musical? He said, oh, well, you were my preacher, and I figured you'd just taken a church member to go see this biblical musical. It never crossed his mind his pastor would actually want to go on a date with someone. Well, the weeks went by and our relationship deepened into love. And one afternoon, Rennie had a contractor to meet her at the church for him to give some prices for possible repairs to the church kitchen. After the contractor left, she stopped by my office and she told me about his recommendations. And our conversation soon changed from church business to our relationship. And suddenly I asked her to marry me. She said yes. We kissed. And the rest of that week is sort of a blur in my own mind. I do know we went and picked out a ring at a jewelry store. And the following Sunday, she was wearing it when I announced to the church our engagement. The congregation's reaction? A standing ovation. One guy walking out the door that Sunday looked at us and beamed and said, I knew the two of you were right for each other. I just did not know you had already figured that out. 2 months later, we got married. And 2 years later, we moved to another city where I became pastor of a church in that community. Fast forward 30 years, and we began planning to build a retirement home. And I'm going to let Rennie tell the rest of that story.
When Wayne and I married, I was a divorcee with 2 little children, ages 6 and 4, and owned my own small home in Carencro, which is north of Lafayette. I knew I was going to have to sell that home because marriage to Wayne meant that we'd be moving all over Louisiana. It also meant I'd become a preacher's wife, that we'd be blending a family with young children, that I'd be trying to keep up with a man whose schedule depended hourly on the church calendar. But the hardest transition for me was moving into a church parsonage. I had my own home. Moving into a house that was owned by the church, maintained by the church, furnished by the church, decorated by the church with 4 little children was often a disaster. However, we had a wonderful life. But those church parsonages were a big fly in the ointment. So imagine our delight when we got to choose not only where we were going to live, we went back to Carencro, but also to design the house that Wayne and I were going to live in together. Okay, after 10 of those church parsonages. Wayne wanted a bookshelf-lined study and some brick on the some stone on the front of the house. I wanted a big back porch. And the rocks that the children and I and Wayne had collected on all of our family vacations, I wanted those incorporated into the stone facade of our fireplace. For the next part of our house, I've got to take you back about 20 years. The church that Wayne and I met and married in closed and relocated a few miles north in the city to a larger piece of property. Okay, and the congregation being thrifty people, they moved much of the church furnishings from the old church building to the new church building. Okay, many of my family still continue to worship there. In 2010, the new church building burned. Once again, the congregation moved those furnishings, only this time to the curb. Well, my sister Cindy's boyfriend thought he spied some salvageable furniture out at the curb. And because he wanted to make points with my sister, who loved to do woodwork, loaded up his truck and brought it to her workshop, where much of it sat for several years. Let's come back to 2015. When my sister Cindy was looking at the floor plan, she saw that we had a peninsula in our kitchen. And she said, what are you going to top that peninsula with? I said, I hadn't thought that far. She said, come to my workshop. So we went to her workshop and she showed me this fabulous, huge solid wood slab. And she explained. She said, this came from our original home church. She said, Raleigh brought it in some of the debris after the church fire. She said, I'm so sorry. I couldn't save the whole desk, but the top was too fabulous to turn loose of. What'd it do? And I thought, oh my goodness. Our home church had 2 desks. There was a little bitty tiny secretary's desk, and then there was the great big pastor's desk. Okay? Both pieces of furniture went from the old church building to the new church building, and they were used for many years before the fire. The desk that Raleigh salvaged, the top of which that Cindy saved, was the very desk where Wayne proposed to me in his office in 1985. Oh yeah, it would do. When I brought that slab to our chief carpenter, he got misty-eyed when I told him the story, and he promised, he said, I will fit and finish that peninsula top to perfection. And so in 2015, in June, just a few days after our 30th wedding anniversary, we came home to find that beautifully refinished desktop turned peninsula top sitting literally in the center, in the very heart of our home. What an affirmation of the risk we took in saying yes to one another. What a benediction on the life we had had since then.
We've served so many meals at that desk turned peninsula, not only to our children, but our grandchildren, and even a great-granddaughter.
Yeah.
And yes, they spilled some milk there. We had to clean up as well.
Quite a bit.
And yes, we found that love is wonderful the second time around in a home built on a desktop.
Thank you, Wayne and Renee, for telling us your love story. It makes me think of mine. If you love their story, show them. You can clap for them with the like button and other reactions. Our next storyteller tonight is Ahmed Beckett.
I grew up in Cairo, Egypt, where young men are expected to do 2 things after they graduate from college: look for a job and look for a wife. I was successful finding a job, but I didn't have much luck finding a wife. When I graduated in 2007, I kept looking, but I didn't have much luck. In 2011, I moved to the United States to accept a scholarship from Fulbright and to teach Arabic as a second language at Georgia Southern University. And I was on a mission to look for 2 things: looking for a wife and also look for a master's degree in political science. I was successful to get accepted in a master's program, but I didn't have much luck finding a wife. Until one day on April 2014, I met with a good friend of mine. His name is Salman Siddiqui, and I talked to him about my plans. And he said, Ahmed, why don't you talk to Salim, who happened to be a visiting professor at Georgia Southern University, and he lives in Mobile, Alabama. He might have a good match for you. I talked to Salim and I said, here are my plans and I'm looking for a match. He said, you know what? There was a young Palestinian American woman who was might be a good match for you 2 weeks ago, but unfortunately she's engaged now. I said, wow, in 2 weeks and she got engaged? Things happen very quickly here. Then he told me, I will talk to my wife and I will see if we might have a good match for you. I said, great. So 2 days later, Salim called me back and he said, I have some good news for you. There's this young Egyptian American lady who lives in Pensacola, Florida. Her father is the imam and who is the leader of the community. And she might be a good match for you. She's about to graduate from her degree in political science. And that might be great. Sounds good for you. I said, okay, that sounds awesome. So I took her father's phone number. I started talking to him and he said, you sound great. And I just need to give the phone to her mom so you can talk to her. I talked to the mother. She said, you sound fabulous. Just said the only thing that I need to do is I need to wait until my daughter comes back from school tonight because she has some night classes and I need to talk to her. I waited patiently until night came. And that night, the mom started texting from her phone and asking me for my personal picture, Facebook profile, so they can do some like background check about me. Anyway, so I found out that was the daughter and her who was texting and not the mom. And I know that, but I didn't want to say anything. we decided that we're going to talk to each other the next day, and the next day at 12 o'clock. And that was my first mistake. I didn't check the time difference between Eastern time in Georgia and Central time in Pensacola, Florida. So I called at 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock in Georgia. She said, "Hey, why are you calling now? We should talk in an hour later." Said, "Why? It's 12 o'clock. It's 12 o'clock here." Said, "No, it's 11. So we got over that, but we talked for about an hour. We kind of liked our conversation. But she said, "Okay, we can continue our conversation later." We kept talking for about a week, like every day for about 2 or 3 hours. She kept asking a lot of questions. And every time I tell her, I feel that I'm interrogated by an FBI agent. But I give her the right that she wants to know a lot of details about my life because she doesn't know me. And we decided to move forward to the next step. So her family invited me to go and visit her in Pensacola, Florida. So when I went to visit Anhar and visit her family, it was during her graduation day. I wanted to impress her. I wore a suit and I had some nice flowers. And something like, if we go back to when I texted that night, I received a text message with her picture. And that picture, that made me think about too many things. First of all, I paused for a second and I looked at her. I said, "Wow, she's so beautiful. She has beautiful eyes, beautiful smile." And I asked myself, and I told myself, is this the person that I might spend the rest of my life with? And my heart was trembling and my heart was shaking and I didn't want to get my hopes up. So I said, okay, I need to wait. I need to be patient. Things might not work out. Let's see how things would go. Until the day I went to Pensacola, Florida to see her during her graduation day. And I was wearing a suit. Even I didn't know how to tie a tie. During the graduation ceremony, I found a gentleman who was wearing a nice suit with a nice tie, and I asked him if he can help me tie my tie. He did. But I couldn't get a chance to see her again during the ceremony, the graduation ceremony. So we went to their house right after to have lunch together. And again, when I saw her in the real person, it affirmed and confirmed all these passion and the feelings that I have for her. Until a person who knocked at the door, who happened to be her best friend, and I didn't know, she showed up. She started asking a lot of questions. And I felt that I'm interrogated by another FBI agent who's asking all these questions to make sure that her best friend will be in safe hands. Anyway, next day we had a dinner. And after the dinner, I found Anhar's father and mother were talking to me. And they were telling me, "Ahmed, you know what? You seem that you are a really good guy. We kind of like you." And also myself, I felt very comfortable in their house. I felt welcomed. And they told me that they are ready to move to the next step. So the next step, so we can talk about engagements and what could be engagement party and what all other steps. I paused for a second and I thought about it. And I found that this is happening too fast. But usually in these traditions or in this culture, like if you go and you propose to someone, though you go back home, you think about it, you pray, you take their time and they think about it and pray. But I found them, they saying like, "We're ready, we accept you, we approve you. Only under one condition." And I said, "What is that?" They said, "We have to know more about your family, where you come from. We have to make sure that you come from a good family and we have to know about their values and all the things." I said, "Okay, this is great. You can talk to my family." But I didn't get them involved yet because I was not sure if things would work out or not. They said, "Okay, we approve you, but we under only one condition. We have to do a background check upon you." I said, "Okay, that's fine. You guys can ask about me, where I live in Georgia, or you can ask about my family, where they live in Cairo, Egypt." And they did that. And we were kind of like on a kind of an agreement. And I went back to Statesboro, Georgia, where I lived. And once I made it home, I was texting Anhar and gave her some calls. She stopped responding to me completely. And I was scared. And I talked to her mom and I asked her, "Did I do anything wrong?" And I asked her sister, her best friend, "Did I upset her? Everything is okay?" She said, "You're okay. You're right. Just like chill. She just needs to take her time and take her space." Okay. I said, "You guys have my phone number. Just let me know how things would go." And I decided to go on a vacation to Tennessee and spend some nice time in a cabin with some of my friends from Georgia Southern University. And I was enjoying the breeze there. And after one day, we were having our breakfast and we're drinking some tea and we're joking and laughing. I found my phone was ringing. And it turns out to be her father. Again, my heart was shaking. I was not sure this is going to be the yes or the no. I really like her and I want to be with her. So the father gave me an answer. The father talked to me and said, "Hey, Ahmed, good news. Congratulations. We accept you and we're ready to move to the next step." I said, "Okay, that makes me feel better. But do you mind if I can hear this from Anhar if she's close to you?" He said, "Yes, she's right next to me." I gave her the phone and I talked to Anhar. I said, "Listen, this is what your dad says. He approves. So what do you think? What are your thoughts?" I said, "Yes, I agree with that." Later on, I found that she told me that was a smart move, that I did that because if I didn't do that and things did not work well, she would tell her parents, that they are the ones who approved me, not her. So she liked that. But later on, we decided that we are going to go to Egypt. So she went to Egypt first. I followed her. We had the engagement party over there. And my family met with her family. Everyone is excited. Every time our feelings towards each other kind of getting stronger. And it was the first time telling her that I love you. And then she said, "I love you too." And 2 weeks later, after our engagement party in June 2014, she told me, "What do you think when we go back to the United States and we can do our religious ceremony, Katbul Kitab or whatever they call it, the nikah, so we can do it in Pensacola in August before the fall semester starts?" I said, "Okay, that sounds great. But don't you think that things are going so fast?" And also, usually, the man who takes that step and asks about these next steps and the time frame. I said, "Yeah, I know, but I know that you're the perfect man for me, and I know that you are that, and I'm the perfect fit for you too." And I thought about it. I know that I had some feelings, but I was not sure. But I told her, "Okay, I think this is a great idea. Let's do it." When we went back to Pensacola, Florida, we had the religious ceremony, Katbul Kitab, the nikah. We were happy. And then I spent like a few days more with them. And then I had to go back to Georgia to start the new semester. After I went back to Georgia, it was very hard for me to stay far away from her. And it was hard for Anhar too. So she told me, "What do you think if we can do the wedding in December?" I said, "You mean in a couple months, in a few months?" I said, "Yes, because when we talked about that before, the plan was supposed to take a year or more than that." I said, "Man, I thought about it. It was like a quick decision if I say yes or if I say no, and I didn't know what to do. But I felt that I cannot live any extra minute without me and Anhar living in the same house. So things are going very fast and very quickly. And we decided to do the wedding in Pensacola, Florida in December 2014, the same year. So engagement, Katbul Kitab or the nikah, the religious ceremony, and then the weddings, everything took less than 8 months. Thinking about it now and living there in Georgia for 2 years as couple together, having an amazing time, and then moved to Lafayette, Louisiana to accept a position in a nonprofit organization, and also moving from that to work at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, thinking about all these steps and the decision that we made and the kind of rush, but we never regret any of these decisions. And we made and now thinking about it, we have some good memories enjoying these decisions. And we are enjoying our time together here after 7 years of marriage with 2 girls and a young boy on the way. And this is how we made all these decisions, and we never regret any of them. I hope you enjoyed listening to my story, and I hope you learned something about my culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. We really appreciate your vulnerability. And we're so excited. Cox is sponsoring the Storytellers Project because they believe in connecting our community with each other and with the people and passions they care about the most. From FaceTime chats and video conferences that make us feel closer to people who are far apart, to the streaming shows and movies that give us something to share with the people we love, Cox uses technology to connect us to each other and to each other's hearts. And Cox is working hard to close the digital divide through the Connect to Compete program for school-age children. Learn more at cox.com/C2C. Connecting is exactly what tonight is all about. So our next storyteller is Mary Beth Broussard.
Hi. So when I was a child, it was nothing for me to hear my father call, Mary, Mary, come see, come see. And it would just be a tree frog on the window or the hummingbirds vibing to get the best spot at the hummingbird feeder. And he'd save treasures he'd find in the yard for me, like a squirrel nest that fallen from the tree. And as a large animal vet, he was often on the road. And whenever he found a turtle, he would pick it up and bring it home. And so we ended up with this backyard full of box turtles, and they would hibernate. They laid eggs. My dad would cut up pieces of tomatoes and leave them for them to eat. And their only nemesis really was our dachshund, Susie, who would pick them up and move them randomly throughout the yard. So sometimes a neighbor would come over and go, I have one of Dan's turtles, and bring him back. And about once a month, we would load up the family Oldsmobile and we'd go to Grand Prairie. And Grand Prairie is this rural Cajun town in Louisiana, and quite different from this suburban area where I lived in Alexandria, with traditional neighborhoods and brick houses. And on the way, it was just about an hour and a half, but you could see the culture change as you drove. Instead of the brick houses, it was more wooden and shotgun style houses. You would have crawfish chimneys all over the yards and Mary statues out front, and you could just see the difference. And my dad, he usually drove, and he liked going. He loved the Cajun culture, but it really wasn't his culture. So, and he was hard of hearing a little bit. And, you know, the Cajun people, they were quite loud. They talked in Cajun and French all at the same time. And so it could be a bit overwhelming, but he did love to go. And so I remember one year, my brother and I decided we were going to bring one of the turtles. And so we got Spanky, who we named for the Little Rascals. And we had painted an S on him. And we, on the drive there, we fed him little rolled up pieces of Angela made bread on the drive to Grand Prairie. And my favorite time to go by far was Easter, because that's when we did our egg knocking, which in the Cajun Catholic tradition is called egg pocking. But how you do it is one person holds the hard-boiled dyed traditional Easter egg pointy side up, and the other person has their egg and they knock it. And if your egg is cracked, then you're out. But my aunt, Laura, who was a big basketball fan, she made this into a whole tournament competition. And so we had basketball brackets, and you would proceed to the Final Four, and then the finals, and then the winner. And so one year, my sister, who's quite shy, she went all the way to the Final Four, and then she went to the semifinals, and then she won the whole thing. So it was all this Cajun commotion of Shy Becky won and Shy Becky this. And I could see my dad always kind of sitting to the side, but he was so happy. Everyone was celebrating Becky. And the reason he always was always a bit to the side was because as a Jewish man, this really was not his traditions. He would participate. He had his egg, you know, he was in there, but it wasn't his culture and his tradition. And on the way home, we would pass the cathedral where my parents were married. And that is where my dad had to sign that for them to get married in the church, that they would raise us Catholic. And so he was very much a man of his word. And so he took us, we made our first communion. We did confirmation. He went to mass with us. He would sit very stoic in his suit and look a bit bored, but he would go. He brought my brother Danny to be an altar boy. And we even went to Catholic school. But about on different Fridays, he would put on a suit and he would go to the synagogue. And I would say, Dad, sometimes, you know, why don't you bring us and introduce us to this part? And he said, no, we decided, you know, that would be just too confusing for y'all. So as time went by, he became elderly and my mom passed away, and he couldn't live alone anymore. So he came to live with us. And my dad was just this very low maintenance, bookish, easygoing man. And he just really needed National Geographic, Archaeology Digest, Discovery Channel on TV, Animal Planet, and he was good. And so we brought him into all the parts of our life as much as we could. He went to ball games and dance recitals and got to see the kids when they dressed up for prom, and he went to Halloween neighborhood gatherings, and we brought him to everything we could. And he loved the Science Museum as well. But his favorite place was by far the Lafayette Parish Public Library. And my dad moved at a turtle pace on most days, excuse me, but not when he went to the library. When he went to the library, he was on a mission. And I brought one time my son and my daughter, my son Connor and Olivia, and he took off on his walker. And my daughter said, "Mom, you're just going to let Papa loose in the library?" And I said, "No, he's fine." And then Connor said, "Olivia, he's fine. This is Papa's natural habitat." And that was very true. The library definitely was his natural habitat. So I still felt, though, something was missing, that he really didn't have a sense of community and he wasn't connected to his religion. And so I said, "Dad, let's start making it work where you can go to the synagogue." Excuse me. I work on Fridays, and that's when the service is, but we had a wonderful sitter, Barbara, who became one of his best friends. And I said, Barbara's going to help you get ready. And when I get home, we're going to go. And so that's what we started doing. And I had thought maybe we could blend into the service and just kind of be in the background. But that really didn't happen, as I didn't really understand all the service. And my father was hard of hearing, talked sometimes real loud. But it was really such a blessing that we didn't, because they reached out to us. And the people of Temple Shalom were so kind to us, and they made an effort with my dad and with me, and included us in different gatherings, and were just so kind. And so then my dad, his favorite service to go to was the Kol Nidre, which is the service before the Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And I had never been. And so the first time we went, and the cantor sang the beautiful Kol Nidre, and that prayer, that chant, it just went through me. And I felt such a connection to I feel to my ancestors, and to it. It just was so moving. And I looked at my dad, and my dad looked as moved, and I could tell he could feel it. He could hear it too. And I thought, this is the first time we've really had a spiritual connection at the same time. And it was such a blessing. And so later, he had congestive heart failure, and his health began to go down. And so I said, "Dad, we couldn't go as often. We went when we could, but we weren't able to go as often." But this time I said, "Dad, let's try to go. I know his health was going, but let's make an effort." And Barbara was sick, and she couldn't get him ready. But I got home, and I said, my husband, Craig, and I said, "We're tag teaming. We're going to get him ready. We're going to make this happen." But I got home, and my dad is totally in his suit, ready to go. And my son, Connor, said, "I don't know how Papa did it, but he got ready by himself." And it just showed me how important it was for him to go, because that was, at that point with his health, was quite difficult for him. And so we went, and it was lovely, and everyone reached out to us again, and were so kind. And then not long after that, my dad passed away, and the people at Temple Shalom reached out to me and made sure we had a rabbi visit him in the hospital. And they helped me get the rabbi to do the service. And we did as much of a Jewish traditional burial as you can do in a Cajun Catholic cemetery in Grand Prairie. And it left, just a kind of hole in our home. And we were all just missed him so much. And so I told my husband, I said, I feel like I need to be in nature. I need to be somewhere that's my happy place, which is Lake Martin. And so my husband and I loaded up the orange kayak, headed out to Lake Martin. And whenever we would go to Lake Martin, I would always pay attention to what I would see to tell my dad, because he would be home waiting. Mary, what'd you see? And I would be like, oh, I saw an osprey bringing a snake to a nest, or an alligator swam a little too close, or these pink spoonbills were just brilliant in the cypress trees. And so I would always save up stories. And this time, these two eagles were flying above my husband and I in the kayak. And I went, oh, I got to remember to tell Dad. I got to tell him about these eagles, because this doesn't happen every time. And then I realized he wasn't there to tell for the first time. And I said, well, it's okay. He's not there, but he's a part of this. He's a part of nature. He's a part of where I am now. And then I felt so grateful that we had a chance, that he taught me to appreciate moments like this. And this is dedicated to my dad, Dan Louie. Thank you.
Thank you for introducing us to your dad, Mary Beth.
Thank you.
We are so thankful for you, because you commute journalism. And as a local journalist, I can't thank you enough. For those of you who aren't subscribers, we appreciate you giving us the chance to show you our value tonight, and hope you consider a digital subscription to the Daily Advertiser. In fact, one of tonight's coaches for the Storytellers is our breaking news reporter, Ashley White. I'd like to say a special thank you to my colleague and friend, Ashley, for all her hard work. Ahmed Beckett, Wayne and Renee Evans, and Mary Beth Broussard. And on behalf of the Storytellers and the Daily Advertiser, thank you for making us a part of your evening. Have a great night.
The COVID-19 vaccines can be our chance to get back to our plans, to get back to each other, to life. But it's okay to have questions, like, how were the vaccines tested? In rigorous clinical trials among adults of diverse backgrounds. Find the latest information at getvaccineanswers.org.